The Bell Witch. In the early 1800s, a family named the Bells lived in a remote part of Tennessee. They were a prosperous and respected family, but they were about to be visited by a supernatural force that would change their lives forever. It began with strange noises in the night. The family heard knocking and scratching at their doors and windows, as if someone or something was trying to get in. At first, they thought it was just the wind or some wild animal, but the noises persisted, growing louder and more insistent with each passing night. Soon, the family began to see apparitions in their home. They saw strange lights and shadows, and they heard disembodied voices whispering in their ear. Then, the witch appeared. The witch was an entity unlike any they had ever encountered. She was malevolent and vengeful, tormenting the family with her powers. She would pull their hair, slap them, and throw objects at them from across the room. She would speak to them in a voice that was both terrifying and mesmerizing, telling them of dark things to come. The Bells were terrified and did not know what to do. They sought the help of their neighbors and even a local preacher, but no one could explain what was happening or how to make it stop. As the weeks turned into months, the witch's attacks grew more frequent and more intense. The family was driven to the brink of madness, and they feared for their lives. Finally, after years of torment, the Bell Witch disappeared as suddenly as she had appeared. The family never knew why she had haunted them or what she had wanted. They only knew that they had survived a terrifying ordeal that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. To this day, the Bell Witch remains a legend in Tennessee, a symbol of the supernatural forces that can lurk in the shadows and torment us in our darkest hours. Her story serves as a warning to all those who would dare to cross the boundary between the living and the dead. Some say that the Bell Witch was the ghost of a woman named Kate Batts, who had a falling out with the Bell family years before. Others believe that the witch was an ancient spirit that had been awakened by the Bell's presence on her land. Whatever the truth may be, the Bell Witch remains one of the most famous and enduring ghost stories in American folklore. Her legend has inspired countless books, movies, and TV shows, and her name is synonymous with terror and the supernatural. To this day, visitors can still visit the site of the Bell Witch haunting, known as the Bell Witch Cave. It is said that the cave is still haunted by the witch's spirit, and that visitors may still hear her very voice whispering in there. But whether the Bell Witch was real or simply a product of the Bell's overactive imaginations, her story serves as a reminder of the power of fear and the unknown. It is a cautionary tale of what can happen when we venture too far into the darkness, and a warning that sometimes the things we fear the most are the things that haunt us for a lifetime. The ghost of the Brown Lady. Deep in the heart of England, nestled in the rolling hills of Norfolk, lies Rainham Hall. It is a grand and stately home with a history that dates back centuries, but it is also home to one of the most famous ghosts in all of England, the Brown Lady. Legend has it that the Brown Lady is the ghost of Lady Dorothy Walpole, who died in 1726. She was the sister of the first British Prime Minister, Robert Walpole, and her life was filled with tragedy and heartache. She was married off to a man she did not love and was forced to endure a life of unhappiness and misery, but it is her death that has ensured her place in history. She died in mysterious circumstances, and it is said that her ghost has haunted Rainham Hall ever since. The first sighting of the Brown Lady was reported in the 1830s. A group of guests staying at Rainham Hall claimed to have seen a ghostly figure floating down the staircase in a brown dress. They described her as beautiful, but also sad and mournful. Since then, countless others have claimed to have seen the Brown Lady. Some say that she floats through the halls of Rainham Hall at night, while others claim to have seen her standing by the windows, gazing out into the darkness. But it was not until the late 20th century that the Brown Lady's true power was revealed. A team of paranormal investigators came to Rainham Hall, armed with the latest technology and a desire to uncover the truth behind the legend. What they discovered was chilling. They captured footage of the Brown Lady on camera, a spectral figure in a brown dress floating down the staircase just as she had done for over a century. They recorded her voice, a mournful whisper that spoke of loss and heartache, and they felt her presence, a cold and eerie feeling that filled the air. The Brown Lady of Rainham Hall remains one of the most enduring ghost stories in all of England. Her ghostly presence continues to haunt the halls of the stately home, a reminder of a tragic life cut short, and a warning to all who would dare to disturb the peace of the dead. And so, the legend of the Brown Lady lives on, a testament to the power of the supernatural and the enduring nature of ghost stories. Despite the best efforts of skeptics and scientists, explain away her existence, the Brown Lady remains a mystery to this day. Some say that she is the embodiment of Lady Dorothy Walpole's grief and pain, while others believe that she is a restless spirit, doomed to wander the halls of Rainham Hall for all eternity. But whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain: the Brown Lady of Rainham Hall has captured the imagination of people around the world. Her ghostly form and mournful voice continue to inspire writers, filmmakers, and artists, and her legend shows no signs of fading away. As for Rainham Hall itself, it remains a popular destination for ghost hunters and paranormal enthusiasts. Visitors flock to the stately home in hopes of catching a glimpse of the Brown Lady or experiencing some other supernatural phenomenon. Some say that the Brown Lady is simply a product of overactive imaginations and wishful thinking, but for those who have seen her, heard her, and felt her presence, there can be no doubt the Brown Lady of Rainham Hall is as real as the chill in the air and the darkness of the night. And so, the legend of the Brown Lady lives on, a haunting reminder of the power of the supernatural and the enduring allure of ghost stories. For as long as people gather around campfires and tell tales of the unknown, the Brown Lady will continue to float down the staircase of Rainham Hall, her brown dress billowing around her like a shroud, and her mournful voice echoing through the halls of the stately home. The ghostly voice of Abraham Lincoln. The White House was never quiet, but something about the Lincoln bedroom always seemed to make the noise fade into the background. Maybe it was the history, maybe it was the rumors of the room being haunted. Either way, there was always a sense of something else being present just out of sight. Winston Churchill was the first to report it. He had stayed in the Lincoln bedroom during World War I, and in the middle of the night, he woke up to the sound of a deep, gravelly voice. He couldn't make out the words, but he knew it was coming from somewhere in the room. He got up to investigate, but the sound faded away before he could pinpoint its origin. Queen Wilhelmina of the Netherlands had a similar experience during her stay at the White House. She heard the same voice, the same words that she couldn't quite make out. She searched the room, but found nothing out of the ordinary. When she asked about it the next day, she was told about Churchill's experience and the rumors of the room being haunted by the ghost of Abraham Lincoln. And Margaret Truman, the daughter of President Truman, also reported hearing the ghostly voice of Lincoln during her stay at the White House. She was staying in the room with her husband when she heard the voice, and when she asked him if he heard it too, he just looked at her like she was crazy. It wasn't until years later that Margaret Truman found out about the other reports of the ghostly voice in the Lincoln bedroom. She wrote about it in her memoirs, and the story gained new life. The rumors of the ghostly voice of Abraham Lincoln in the Lincoln bedroom continue to this day. Some believe it's just a trick of the mind, a shared hallucination brought on by the history and the rumors of the room. Others believe that Lincoln's spirit lingers on, unable to leave the place where he once lived and worked. Whatever the truth may be, there's no denying that the Lincoln bedroom is a place of mystery and intrigue, a place where the past and the present seem to blur together. And for those who have heard the ghostly voice of Abraham Lincoln, it's a place that will never be forgotten. As night fell over the White House, the Lincoln bedroom grew still. They only sound the soft rustle of the curtains in the breeze. But then, faintly at first, the voice began to speak. It was a voice that had been silent for over 100 years, a voice that had guided a nation through its darkest hours. As the voice grew louder, the air in the room began to chill, and the hairs on the back of Margaret Truman's neck stood on end. She could make out the words now whispered from somewhere unseen in the room. "Keep on the path, my children. Do not falter in the face of adversity, for the road ahead is long and winding, but it leads to the light." The voice faded away, leaving the room once again shrouded in silence. But for Margaret Truman, the experience was one that would stay with her for the rest of her life. As she left the Lincoln bedroom and made her way down the hall, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had just been given a message from beyond the grave, a message from a president who had given his life for his country and whose spirit continued to watch over it even after death. For years to come, the ghostly voice of Abraham Lincoln would continue to be heard in the Lincoln bedroom, a reminder of the legacy of one of America's greatest leaders. And for those who had the privilege of hearing it, it was a haunting and unforgettable experience that would stay with them forever. The Ghosts of Gettysburg. The sun was setting over the rolling hills of Gettysburg, casting a golden glow over the battlefield. But as the darkness crept in, something else began to emerge. The ghost of the soldiers who had fought and died in the bloody Civil War battle still lingered in the air, their presence palpable to those who dared to venture onto the hallowed ground. As they walked through the empty fields, they could feel the weight of history bearing down on them. It was as if they had stepped back in time to the very moment when the battle had raged on around them. And then they saw them ghostly apparitions of soldiers still fighting the battle, their faces twisted in agony and fear. They watched in awe and horror as the ghostly soldiers charged across the field, their weapons raised high. They could hear the sound of musket fire and the clashing of swords, even though there was no one there. But as they continued to watch, they saw something even more chilling. Ghosts carrying wounded soldiers off the battlefield, their faces filled with sadness and despair. It was as if the battle had never ended, as if the ghost of the soldiers was still fighting and dying on the battlefield to this very day. They knew that they had stumbled upon something beyond their comprehension, something that defied explanation. But as they turned to leave, they couldn't shake the feeling that the ghosts of Gettysburg would haunt them for the rest of their days. For those who visit Gettysburg, beware. The ghosts of the soldiers who died in the battle still roam the fields, and their presence is a chilling reminder of the cost of war and the toll it takes on the human soul. As they walked away from the battlefield, they felt a sense of unease settle over them. They couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that the ghosts of the soldiers were still following them. They quickened their pace, eager to leave the haunted site behind them. But as they approached their car, they saw something that made them freeze in their tracks. There, standing beside their vehicle, was the ghost of a Confederate soldier. He wore a tattered uniform and carried a musket at his side. They tried to run, but their legs felt like lead. They were frozen in place, unable to move as the ghostly soldier approached them. He looked at them with an expression that was both sad and angry. "You should not be here," he said, his voice a whisper on the wind. "This is not a place for the living." And then, just as suddenly as he had appeared, the ghostly soldier disappeared, leaving them standing alone in the darkness. They knew that they had witnessed something incredible, something that few people had ever experienced. But they also knew that they would never forget the ghosts of Gettysburg and the haunted battlefield that still echoed with the sounds of war. As they drove away from the battlefield, they couldn't help but wonder if the ghosts of the soldiers would ever find peace, or if they would continue to haunt the site of the deadliest battle in American history for all eternity. The ghost of the Rum's Queen Mary. The Rum's Queen Mary was a majestic ocean liner that sailed through the treacherous waters of the Atlantic. But when it retired from service and settled in Long Beach, California, it became a different kind of vessel, a ghost ship. Many stories of ghost sightings and paranormal activities have been linked to the Queen Mary. Some say they've heard disembodied voices, felt sudden chills, and seen mysterious figures roaming the hallways. But the most famous ghost of the Queen Mary is the spirit of a young girl named Jackie. Legend has it that Jackie drowned in the ship's pool, and her ghost still haunts the area, looking for someone to play with. One night, a group of curious visitors decided to explore the pool area, hoping to catch a glimpse of the ghostly apparition. They descended down a narrow stairwell, their flashlights casting flickering shadows on the walls. As they reached the bottom, they saw a figure in the water, a girl with long wet hair. Reaching out to them, they froze in fear, unsure of what to do. But then they heard a giggle, and the girl disappeared, leaving them alone in the dark. From that night on, the visitors swore that they felt a presence in the pool area, a feeling of being watched by unseen eyes, and some even claimed to have seen Jackie's ghost again, calling out to them from the depths of the water. But Jackie was not the only ghost on the Queen Mary. There were stories of a haunted cabin where the furniture would move on its own, a phantom chef who still cooked meals in the galley, and a ghostly couple who danced in the ballroom. As the years passed, more and more people reported strange occurrences on the Queen Mary. Some believed that the ship was a portal to the afterlife, a place where spirits could come and go as they pleased. And so, the Queen Mary remained a haunted ship, a place where the living and the dead mingled, and where the past and present coexisted in an eerie harmony. Despite the many ghostly encounters that had taken place on the Queen Mary, there were still skeptics who dismissed the stories as mere myths and legends. But for those who had experienced the supernatural on the ship, there was no doubt that something otherworldly was at play. One group of paranormal investigators decided to spend a night on the Queen Mary, hoping to capture some evidence of the ghosts that were said to haunt the ship. They set up their equipment in one of the most haunted areas and waited in the silence of the night. As the hours passed, they heard strange noises and saw unexplainable shadows moving about. They felt sudden gusts of cold air and heard whispers in their ears. But when they played back the recordings of their investigation, they were stunned to hear the clear sound of a child's voice saying, "Come play with me." It was a chilling reminder of the story of Jackie, the young girl who still haunted the ship's pool. And it was just one of the many pieces of evidence that suggested that the Queen Mary was indeed a place where the living and the dead coexisted. But despite the eerie atmosphere and the ghostly encounters, there were still those who were drawn to the Queen Mary. For some, it was the allure of a bygone era, of a time when luxury liners sailed the seas in grand style. For others, it was the thrill of the paranormal, of exploring the unknown and the unexplained. And so the Queen Mary remained a destination for both the living and the dead, a place where history and mystery converge, and where the ghosts of the past still lingered. The ghosts of the Tower of London. The Tower of London loomed before them, an ancient fortress with a history of bloodshed and betrayal. It was said to be one of the most haunted places in England, and as they made their way through the dark, twisting corridors, the hairs on the back of their necks stood on end. It wasn't long before they saw the first ghostly apparition. It was a woman dressed in Tudor-era clothing, with long brown hair and a sad expression on her face. They knew immediately that it was the ghost of Anne Boleyn, the former Queen of England who had been beheaded in the Tower in 1536. She walked the corridors carrying her own head, her eyes filled with sorrow and regret. They followed her through the labyrinthine halls, unable to look away from the gruesome sight. But Anne Boleyn was not the only ghost they encountered in the Tower of London. They saw the spectre of Lady Jane Grey, a 9 days queen who had been executed in the Tower in 1554. They saw the ghost of King Henry VIII, who had been murdered in the Wakefield Tower in 1471, and they saw the ghost of Sir Walter Raleigh, who had been imprisoned in the Bloody Tower for years before his execution in 16. Each ghost they encountered had a story to tell, a tale of love, loss, and tragedy. They felt their presence all around them, a cold and haunting reminder of the Tower's dark past. As they made their way out of the Tower of London, they couldn't shake the feeling that they had witnessed something truly extraordinary. The ghost of the tower had left an indelible impression on them, a reminder of the power of history, and the ghost that continued to haunt us to this day. For those who dare to enter the Tower of London, beware, the ghosts that reside within its walls are not easily forgotten, and their stories will continue to echo through the halls for centuries to come. Suddenly, they heard a sound that chilled them to the bone. It was the sound of heavy footsteps, echoing through the tower's ancient walls. They turned to face the direction of the sound, but there was no one there. As the footsteps grew louder and more distinct, they realized that they were not alone. Another ghostly presence had joined them, and it was one that they did not recognize. The footsteps stopped, and they waited in silence for what felt like an eternity. Then a voice spoke out of the darkness. "You're not welcome here," the voice said, cold and menacing. "Leave this place at once, or face the consequences." They looked at each other, fear etched on their faces. They had never heard a voice so cold and filled with malice before. They turned to flee, but as they did, they saw a figure emerge from the shadows. It was a man dressed in medieval armor, his face obscured by a helmet. He held a sword in his hand, and he looked like he meant business. They ran as fast as they could, their hearts pounding in their chests. As they burst out into the bright sunlight, they realized that they had narrowly escaped the ghostly clutches of the Tower of London. For the rest of their lives, they would never forget the chilling experience they had had. They knew that the ghosts of the tower were real, and that they continued to haunt the ancient fortress to this day. And as they looked back at the tower from a distance, they couldn't help but wonder what other ghostly secrets it held within its walls. The Ghostly Hitchhiker. It was a dark and stormy night. The kind of night that makes you want to stay indoors and lock the doors. But Tom was a thrill seeker, and he loved nothing more than a good scare. So when he saw the figure on the side of the road, he pulled over without a second thought. "Need a ride?" he called out to the woman, who was drenched from head to toe. She nodded gratefully and climbed into the passenger seat. Tom couldn't help but notice how cold she was to the touch, but he figured it was just from being out in the rain. As they drove along the deserted road, Tom tried to make small talk with the woman, but she seemed distant and aloof. He couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. When they reached the address the woman had given him, Tom pulled over and turned to her. but she was gone, disappeared without a trace, leaving nothing behind but a cold spot on the seat where she had been sitting. It wasn't until later that Tom learned the truth about the ghostly hitchhiker. Her name was Sarah, and she had died in a car accident on that very road years before. Ever since then, she had been hitchhiking, trying to find her way home. Tom was not the first person to encounter Sarah's ghost, nor would he be the last. There were countless reports of people picking up hitchhikers only to have them disappear without a trace. And Sarah wasn't the only ghostly hitchhiker haunting the roads. There was the ghost of Resurrection Mary, who was said to haunt the roads around Resurrection Cemetery in Chicago, and the ghost of Vanishing Veronica, who disappeared from a car in New Jersey in the 1970s and was never seen again. As Tom learned more about the ghostly hitchhikers, he couldn't help but feel a chill run down his spine. The thought of picking up a stranger on the side of the road, only to have them vanish into thin air, was enough to make him swear, of thrill-seeking for good. But even as he tried to put the ghostly hitchhikers out of his mind, he couldn't help but wonder what other secrets were hiding in the darkness, waiting to be discovered. And would he have the courage to face them if he ever came across them again? Despite his fears, Tom couldn't resist the allure of the unknown. He continued to explore the world of the supernatural, seeking out other ghostly hitchhikers and paranormal phenomena. He traveled to Resurrection Cemetery in Chicago, hoping to catch a glimpse of the infamous Resurrection Mary, but all he saw were rows upon rows of graves stretching out into the distance like an endless sea. He drove through the winding roads of New Jersey, searching for any sign of Vanishing Veronica, but the only thing he found was the eerie silence of the deserted roads and the faint whisper of the wind through the trees. As he delved deeper into the world of the paranormal, Tom began to realize that the ghostly hitchhikers were just the tip of the iceberg. There were haunted houses and cursed objects, demonic possessions and vengeful spirits, all lurking in the darkness, waiting to be discovered. And with each new discovery, Tom felt his fear and excitement grow in equal measure. The thrill of the unknown was like a drug, and he couldn't resist its siren song. But as he journeyed deeper and deeper into the darkness, Tom began to realize that the line between reality and fantasy was becoming blurred. He couldn't tell if what he was seeing was real or just a product of his own overactive imagination. And then one night, as he was driving down a deserted road, he saw something that would change his life forever. A ghostly figure floating in the middle of the road, beckoning him closer. Tom's heart raced as he approached the figure, unsure of what he would find. But as he drew closer, the figure disappeared, leaving nothing behind but a faint whisper in his ear. It was then that Tom knew he had gone too far, had become consumed by the darkness, and he needed to find his way back to the light. He gave up his search for the paranormal and returned to a life of normalcy, but the memory of the ghostly hitchhikers and the otherworldly phenomena stayed with him always, and he knew that, no matter how hard he tried to forget, the darkness would always be waiting for him just be the edge of the light. As